All right, this is part two of talking about our our early American history. I pulled this up just so I could kind of go back to the fact that our our settlers, the people that founded this nation, um, were very patient with England and the tyrannical government that was governing them. We find this in the Declaration of Independence, the second paragraph. It says this: prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. In other words, we shouldn't change a government for minuscule reasons, for just small acts. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. Now this is, I find this kind of interesting, because this is showing, what this is basically saying is that people will suffer these acts of tyranny and being mistreated, instead of doing what they ought to do, and that is taking care of the business, and doing away with the people that are uh, creating or abusing their power on the people. Uh, we read further, it says, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. And they even go on to describe their current situation. Such has it been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having an object, a direct object, the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. Guys, I have to ask, what is the difference between what was happening then and what we see happening now? And not only did these guys make this statement, they even gave, in bullet form, some facts as to how this tyrannical government was operating. He has refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. Now, you have to remember that at this time, England was supposed to be ruled under the oh my gosh, my mind just went blank, Magna Carta, and so the Magna Carta was their supreme law of the land, just like the Constitution is our supreme law of the land. And you know what? The same exact thing happened in England that's happening here. They've kicked the Constitution aside, and these government people are just doing whatever they want, whether it's constitutional or not. And the King of England has, done the same thing. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend them. Let's see. I want to get down to. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. Guys, don't we see that today? Don't we see that today? He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary power. Here's the thing. Our judges today are just as corrupt as, and why? Because it's all a part of the same government. Listen, there's nothing wrong with our rule of law. Our rule of law is fine. The problem is they're not operating under that rule of law. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislators. And what this is talking about is British soldiers on American soil for no reason whatsoever. In fact, they were there to make sure that the people were operating under English law and English rule. And there's a whole laundry list of things that are here, and you can take the time to read this. It's the Declaration of Independence, and you will see that many of the things that are listed here you see in our own government today. And my point is, in part of this, is the fact that the settlers in this nation, as I stated in the last video, recognized what was getting ready to come, and they knew what had to be done in order to obtain the type of freedom that they were looking for. I've said this over and over again. If you study history, revolts are bloody, and it's unfortunate that it winds up that way. And actually, whose fault is it? Whose fault? Who do we really blame for the bloodletting in revolutions and revolts? The people or the government who oversteps their authority and their boundary in bringing the people as subjects and slaves and servants under their thumb? See, if they didn't do this to begin with, we wouldn't have the bloodshed. If the government would step down and do their job, which is to protect our rights, God-given, certain unalienable rights, instead of infringing upon those rights, if our government did its job of common defense against the nation, and what this means is bringing every one of our military people home, with the exception of our Navy. Our Navy should make sure that the shipping lanes remain clear, and that is their only job, is to make sure that shipping is free from piracy and whatnot. And it's still a defense mode only. Our troops should be brought home, and they should be well trained, but they should not be a standing army on our soil, and should only be activated when there is an invasion of our nation. We should not be fighting in wars abroad. We have no business doing that. And George Washington made that very clear, and I'm going to look this up while I'm speaking here. But at the end of the day, and I find it interesting because we're the only nation that that has standing armies around the world, in 130 some nations, and so why is that? Why should we have our military being used as the world's police force? And really the answer is we shouldn't. We should never have allowed our military to be used by the world and that's just kind of where we are. And I'm looking for this particular phrase, and I can't find it. But I will, because this is a real long farewell speech. But if you just Google George Washington's farewell speech, September 17th, 1796, it gives you the entire speech. And actually, there's more. There's more here that really you'd be better off just to read this whole thing, because George Washington was a very, very smart man when it came to foreign affairs. And basically his whole gist was, we shouldn't make any long-term treaties. We should stay out of the affairs of Europe, and you know, basically he's saying that we ought to be the sovereign nation that we are, and just not get in all these affairs with everybody else. And listen, that's what I just said by you know, putting our military in all of these and all these other nations, for whose benefit, by the way? The government. They're not fighting for yours and my freedom. They are fighting for corporate interests, and we have to remember that corporate interests are what is supporting our government. Make no mistake about it. Our government relies upon the banks and corporations to stay in business, and these things ought not be. They really shouldn't be that way. And unfortunately, the way things are today, we're supporting the corporations because we're buying their products. And I know this is very, very difficult in today's society, where there's very few outlets, if you will, of getting our goods and services without supporting the corporations. And how tragic is that? And it's unfortunate that we can't distance ourselves from that and go back to private business, private ownership, mom and pop shops, if you will, and put these big corporations, which are running not just our nation but the entire global society, into the dirt. Listen, guys, this isn't just America. This is global wide, that people want to be freed from this corporate run government system. And I'm going to start a third video here, so I will cut this off and start video number 3.